end of the day, if they are not talking, if they do not have that hotline to Saudi Arabia, we run into problems. Do you think that the folks in the administration understand that? Because they don't even have an ambassador in Riyadh right now.
I mean, again, I think this is a huge problem that goes beyond the White House. I'm very focused on what happens with congressional sanctions. You now have conversations about, halting arms sales to Saudi Arabia. You have this NOPEC bill, which would essentially, subject OPEC members to Sherman antitrust legislation. That's made it into the National Defense Authorization Act. And so you could have, significant congressional action on Saudi Arabia, again, at a time that we have a war involving the world's commodity superstore. We are very concerned about what happens in terms of Russian energy supplies come December. Who's going to fill that gap? And so if you have a situation where you have potentially this NOPEC bill passing, you could see, real concerns about, will Saudi Arabia pull back their treasuries? Will there be sort of, equities, divestiture? Again, at a moment where we have this war involving Russia. So the question is sort of what is the off ramp? Because I'm not sure you can have this conflict with Saudi Arabia heating up while we have a very, very serious war involving Russia.
Hi, Helima, Dan here. Would you also say that there is risk of escalation, not de-escalation at this point, given the midterm election pressure that President Biden is continuing to face, and that pressure will be ratcheting up over the next few months? And then at the same time as well, I thought it was interesting not just to look at the reaction from the OPEC members, but also from Saudi Arabia's defense minister, who tweeted in the last few hours that he was, quote, astonished by the accusations that Saudi Arabia was siding with Russia. Your reaction to that, and also what is likely to happen here with regards to how the US will ultimately respond?
I mean, the midterms, I think, is obviously a key factor. I mean, rising retail gasoline prices is, especially unwelcome for Democrats in key swing states like Nevada. And so I do think that is, certainly a factor behind what we are seeing now. I mean, retail gasoline prices have been trending down since summer, and that had been bolstering the Democrats' midterm election prospects. And so I do think that this 2 million barrel a day cut, it was basically going to be 1 million barrels a day when you think about the amount of barrels that are actually going to be pulled off the market. But that headline number, I think, has caused a lot of anxiety about the midterm election prospects for Democrats. And you see the Republicans have been notably silent, except for Senator Grassley, about this OPEC decision. So I do think that midterms play a big role in this. So the question is, when you get past the midterms, do you see some people taking a breath and saying, okay, let's look at the sort of state of the market, let's look at the state of the oil markets, do we want this confrontation? But I certainly think that rising rhetoric is what we should expect going into the midterms from Democrats, essentially saying that Saudi Arabia is responsible for retail gas prices increasing, blaming them for saying that they are supporting the Russians. I think it's going to feature prominently in the campaign rhetoric. And just the question is, do we get any signs of an off-ramp after the midterms?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how all of that unfolds. Clearly, the US-Saudi disconnect is going to be a key theme for Q4. Helima, just quickly, on the Russian price cap, do we have any clarity yet on what that price might actually be set at? And what's your house latest view on how that situation unfolds?
I mean, we still don't have concrete numbers on what this price is going to be. Questions still remain about how it's going to be enforced. I mean, I think from the standpoint of the Treasury Department, they see the key goal is enabling Russian barrels to continue to flow to key Asian markets once you have not only the embargo on those barrels going into Europe, but the concurrent sanctions on providing Western support to move those barrels anywhere in the world, shipping and insurance sanctions. And so I think they will see the policy as a success if we don't have a significant Russian disruption. I think the inflation reduction aspect of that is important, but they really want to make sure, again, that you have these barrels moving. So I think the price cap, from the standpoint of driving down the price of Russian oil, is important to them, but they want those barrels to move. The question is, do the Russians want to play along? I think the whole premise is that Russia won't have any choice but to sell their oil at a reduced price. I think the Russians have made it clear they want to make sure that this policy fails. And so again, if the Russians start pulling back the barrels, if they don't play along, there's going to be a supply gap that somebody needs to fill. U.S. shale is not growing at a rate to fill that gap. The question is, will the Middle Eastern producers step up? So again, I think this rising tension between the United States and Saudi Arabia is not going to be welcome if we have a major Russian disruption come December.
Yeah, we're watching closely. Hey, Helima, always appreciate the conversation. From Hartley and myself, thanks for staying up late. Have a great day ahead.